Sefer Vayikra, that we begin this Shabbos, is called Torah's Kohanim. It is the book that contains the laws of the Kohanim, the priests who served in the Mishkan and later on in the Beis HaMikdash. The Kohanim were the ones who were in charge of all of the service that was done in the Beis HaMikdash and earlier in the Mishkan. And what they would do is they would take care of the korbanos, the sacrifices that were brought on behalf of the people. What kind of sacrifices? Well, there were those who were able to afford animals which were more expensive. There are those people who brought an animal, for example, as a goat as a sacrifice. Other people those who couldn't afford that, brought a couple of birds as sacrifices. And people who couldn't even afford animals would bring a korban mincha, which was a korban that could basically contain flour. So each person, according to their level, would bring something to the Mishkan and later on to the Beis HaMikdash. Why would they have to bring? Well, the answer is that a korban, the root, the shoresh of the word korban is karev. Karev means to become close. If a person wanted to become close to Hashem, close to God, then they had to give something of their own. And this is what they ended up giving. So the Kohanim would take it and they would slaughter the animal, they would sprinkle its blood. This was the procedure throughout the times in the Mishkan and the Beis HaMikdash. One of the halachos, one of the laws in the laws of korbanos mentioned in our parsha is that on every korban there needed to be salt placed on the korban itself. Al kol korbancha takriv melech. Every korban, regardless of whether it was an animal korban, it was a bird, or whether it was a korban brought of flour, there had to be salt placed on the korban. Now we know salt is a preservative. We know certainly when it comes to meat that one wants to preserve meat or preserve flesh, they put salt on it. But why would one even need to bring salt on a flour korban? What does salt mean here? It seems to have a deeper meaning than simply preserving the meat that was going to be placed on the Mizbeach. So the Oznayim LaTorah explains that indeed that is the case. Salt, as we know, is a preservative, but salt in this case also has a deeper message. And that is that the individual who is bringing the korban understands that they have to be contributing, giving something of their own. And there's part of us as human beings that when we give of our own, there's part of us that says, well, maybe we need that. Maybe we shouldn't give as much as we wanted to give because we're going to need it ourselves for our own self-preservation. So there's part of us that fights with the other side. Our Yetzer Tov, our good inclination, fights with our Yetzer Hara, with our evil inclination, and says, no, you should bring the korban, you should bring the sacrifice. While the other side says, no, you're going to need that. And so the salt reminds us to preserve. What are we preserving? Not only the relationship between us and God by virtue of bringing the korban, but what we're really preserving is, we're preserving the notion that as we give of ourselves, we are preserving ourselves. And this can be made clear on two different levels, and that is the first one, is that a person gives money. They should realize, for example, if they give charity, that by virtue of them giving charity, Hashem will bless them, that they'll be able to keep more of the money that they have, or they'll be able to have more money than they have. And on the second level, the idea of preserving is that we can only preserve ourselves as people if we give of ourselves. If we're only keeping everything that we have, all that we have to offer, all that we have to influence others, to inspire other people, and we keep it to ourselves, then ultimately we're not going to be able to really feel a sense of satisfaction. Only by giving it to someone else, only by serving as an inspiration, as a role model to others, will we then feel that we are accomplishing and that we are succeeding. And so the salt that we place on that Mizbeach, on the korban, really represents a deeper level of self-preservation. Self-preservation that only comes through giving of oneself. Whether it's giving of charity financially, since we no longer bring korbanos, but giving to others and thereby giving to Hashem, or it's by giving of ourselves in a non-financial way. Giving of our talents, giving of our time, giving of our own minds to various different people or institutions in order to help and preserve not only Torah, the life of Torah and mitzvos today, but preserve it to the next generation and into the future. Thank you for listening, and have a good Shabbos.